Hello everyone. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in bed with someone you love, someone you trust, and yet felt that there was so much more you both could explore? Not because you aren't attracted to each other, not because you lack passion, but because there are unspoken desires quietly waiting beneath the surface. The kind of desires that never quite make it into conversation, the ones that live in her imagination when she's alone, the ones she would never admit unless she knew she would be deeply understood. In intimacy, we often repeat the familiar movements, rhythms, positions that feel safe, but comfort can sometimes become routine, and routine can quietly dim the spark. And here's the truth, many women, even the most confident ones, carry secret fantasies about the way they want to be touched, held, positioned, yet they rarely voice them. Not because they don't trust you, but because they fear judgment, rejection, or breaking the illusion of harmony. Today we're going to open that door, not with crude curiosity, but with the kind of gentle boldness that makes her feel both desired and safe. We'll explore 5 positions she secretly craves, positions that awaken not only the body, but also the deeper emotional connection between you. And once you understand them, you'll never see intimacy the same way again. When it comes to intimacy, we often imagine that the spark is fueled only by attraction, that if you're drawn to each other, everything else will naturally fall into place. But the truth is, desire is far more delicate, far more layered than we admit. It's not just about being naked together. It's about the quality of presence, the unspoken communication, the willingness to step into her inner world and say, I see you. I want all of you, not just the parts you're used to showing me. Men sometimes believe that mastering intimacy is about stamina or frequency, but women, especially as they grow into themselves, crave something much more nuanced. They want variety that doesn't just please the body, but makes them feel chosen, celebrated, and yes, mysteriously surprised. One of the biggest secrets, she may want you to take her somewhere she's never been before without her having to ask, because asking can be risky. It can make her feel exposed. It's why so many women keep these desires locked away in the vault of maybe one day. Let's start with the first. It's less about gymnastics and more about psychology. Think of it as the eyes wide open position, not in the literal sense of keeping your eyes open, but in the way you hold her gaze during intimacy. Instead of defaulting to positions where your faces are turned away from each other, try the ones that keep your eyes aligned, your breathing intertwined. It could be a variation of missionary where you shift your weight just enough to free your hands, to trace her hairline, her jaw, the curve of her neck. Places that ignite her nervous system. The magic here is not in the novelty of the position, but in the quality of how it's done. You slow down. You don't rush toward climax. You explore the art of hovering, being close enough that she can feel your breath, but not giving her everything at once. This builds anticipation, and anticipation is the mother of desire. You'll notice her chest rise differently, her voice soften, her body tilt upward toward you, as if pulled by a force she can't control. But to do this well, you have to stay attuned. Your hands are not just hands. They're a language. Every small touch is saying, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm not in a hurry. And when you pair that with a position that allows full visibility of her face, something shifts. It's no longer just physical. It's deeply intimate. She feels seen, not just touched. The second is one most men underestimate: when she's on top. But with you guiding the tempo, not by force, but by subtle invitation. Many either become completely passive in this position or try to control it in a way that feels rushed. But when you slow her down, when you place your hands on her hips, not to thrust but to anchor her, she begins to experience it differently. You can use your thighs, your core, your gentle lifting to create an interplay. She leads, but you're the current beneath her movement. This position is secretly powerful for women because it's a blend of control and surrender. She's in command of the depth and rhythm, but your presence beneath her becomes the frame in which her expression unfolds. And here's the secret. It allows her to watch you watching her. For many women, that visual connection is electric. It makes them feel adored, admired, and safe enough to go deeper into pleasure without self-consciousness. And yet, most men miss the emotional layer. They focus on the mechanics, speed, movement, without realizing that what makes this position unforgettable is the way you touch her elsewhere while she moves. Your fingertips on her ribs, the back of her neck, a slow glide along her spine. You're not just letting her ride, you're weaving her into a cocoon of sensory attention. When done this way, the position transforms. It's no longer about who's on top. It's about mutual rhythm, about the exchange of power in a way that doesn't need words. And because she's the one moving, it allows her to feel in tune with her own body, to explore angles that bring her the most pleasure, something many women rarely get the chance to fully experience without pressure. What's fascinating is that both of these positions, the face-to-face intimacy and the anchored guided woman on top, are not about extreme novelty. They're about refining what you already know, tuning into her in a way that makes familiar territory feel brand new. And when you create that kind of shift, she begins to trust that you're not just a participant in bed, you're an artist. Desire thrives in this space between familiarity and surprise. Too much routine and it fades, too much unpredictability and it feels unsafe. But when you give her the comfort of knowing you, paired with the thrill of discovering something new through you, she won't just respond, she'll open. And once a woman opens in that way, you'll feel it in every part of her body, every look, every breath. It's in these moments that intimacy becomes something much more than an act. It becomes a language you both speak fluently. And once that happens, the possibilities expand far beyond the bedroom. There's something profound that happens when you give a woman the permission to explore herself through you. Not in the sense of ticking off a checklist of positions, but in the way you become the safe space for her to unfold, to reveal parts of her sensuality she didn't even know were waiting. By now you've felt how powerful it is to keep her in your gaze, to let her take the lead while you guide her energy. But there's another kind of desire she holds quietly. A craving for moments where she's swept up in your direction, where you're the one taking her somewhere she didn't see coming. Imagine this, she's lying on her stomach, the sheets slightly tangled around her hips. You lean over her, your hands framing her shoulders, your lips brushing the back of her neck. You don't rush to move her, you let your weight melt into hers, just enough for her to feel completely surrounded. This isn't about force, it's about enveloping her in your presence so fully that she lets go of the outside world. From here, you can shift into a variation that keeps her chest down, hips raised, an angle that heightens sensation in ways she rarely experiences. For many women, this position is secretly intoxicating because it taps into something primal. There's an element of surrender in having you behind her, your body aligned with hers, your pace guiding the moment. But here's the nuance. It's only intoxicating if it's paired with tenderness. If your hand slides up her side, if you pause to kiss the curve of her shoulder, if you whisper something only meant for her ear, the primal becomes profoundly intimate. It stops being just a position. It becomes a place where she feels completely claimed and yet deeply cherished. You see, this is where so many men get it wrong. They think the thrill for her is only in the physical angle, the deep penetration, the heightened sensation. But what truly makes it memorable is the layering of sensations. Your weight, your breath, your hands, your voice, creating a full body experience. Without those layers, it's just another position. With them, it's a moment she replays in her mind long after the night ends. And then there's a position that surprises most men when I tell them how much women secretly think about it: standing. Not the rushed against the wall, movie scene version that's over before it begins, but a deliberate, anchored standing connection where you lift her just enough to change her perspective. Perhaps it's in the kitchen, or by the window, or somewhere unexpected in your home. The key here isn't novelty for novelty's sake, it's the shift in physicality. She feels your strength not as dominance but as support. You become the ground she stands on, even when her feet are barely touching it. When you hold her like that, you're telling her without words, I can carry you, not just now, but in life. And for a woman over 30, especially one who juggles work, relationships, family, and the constant noise of daily demands, that sensation of being held, literally and figuratively, can pierce through her walls like nothing else. It's not just sexy. It's deeply emotional. In this kind of standing intimacy, everything slows. You're not rushing to prove stamina. You're savoring the moment. You can kiss her neck without bending down. You can meet her eyes without her craning upward. You can feel her heartbeat against yours in a way that lying down doesn't quite capture. And because it's less common, it feels like an event, even if it happens in the middle of the afternoon. These positions, her chest down, hips raised while you're behind her, and the slow, anchored standing embrace are both about shifting her experience of space and sensation. They change the perspective, quite literally, of how she receives you. And in doing so, they invite her into a deeper dimension of vulnerability, trust, and exhilaration. When a woman experiences this, when she feels you choosing positions not from habit, but from an understanding of what unlocks her, she begins to see you differently. You're not just a partner. You're a guide into her own pleasure. You're someone who reads her body like a poem, who knows that intimacy isn't measured in minutes, but in how deeply you make her feel in those minutes. There's a moment in every truly connected, intimate life when you stop asking, what do I want to do to her? And start asking, what part of her have I not yet met? Because in every woman, no matter how long you've been together, there are hidden rooms, and some of those rooms can only be opened when you invite her into something that's both thrilling and safe. The fifth position lives in that delicate space. It's the straddle from behind, but not in the way you might picture it. You're seated, leaning back slightly, your legs open just enough for her to sink back onto you, her spine meeting your chest. She's facing away, yet you're wrapped around her, arms encircling her waist, lips tracing the side of her neck. Your hands can roam, holding her hips, cupping her breasts, or intertwining your fingers with hers. Why is this one so powerful? Because it fuses two seemingly opposite sensations, being completely surrounded and yet in control. She can move as she wishes, choosing the pace, the depth, and you, in turn, become her anchor, her stability, her backdrop. It's like telling her, go wherever you want, I'm right here. From her perspective, this position creates a deeply vulnerable kind of pleasure. She can let her head fall back onto your shoulder, feeling your breath against her ear. She can hear your reactions without seeing your face, which, strangely enough, can give her the courage to explore more freely, because sometimes being watched feels thrilling, but sometimes being unseen frees a different part of her. The beauty here is in the rhythm you create together. It's not just about movement, it's about how you hold her between each motion. Maybe you pause, tighten your arms around her, and whisper something that makes her shiver. Maybe you slow her down to a crawl, making the seconds stretch until she's aching for you to move again. This is where mastery comes in, not in lasting longer, but in making time feel like it has no meaning. When you've given her all 5 of these experiences, the gaze-filled closeness, the guided woman on top, the chest down hips, raised surrender, the slow anchored standing embrace, and the seated back to chest straddle, you've done more than introduce new positions. You've introduced new versions of her, versions that laugh differently, moan differently, breathe differently. And here's the truth most people don't tell you: great lovers are not remembered for what they did once. They're remembered for the worlds they opened inside their partners. A position is just choreography, but when it's paired with presence, attention, and emotional fluency, it becomes a key that unlocks something unforgettable. In long-term relationships, this is what keeps passion alive. It's not buying new lingerie or memorizing some acrobatic routine you saw online. It's knowing that novelty comes from rediscovery, that the woman you love today is not the same woman you met 5 years ago, or even last year. She's evolving, her body changes, her fantasies shift, her needs deepen. And if you keep meeting those shifts with curiosity instead of assumption, you'll always have something new to explore. This is where so many couples lose their spark. They stop exploring because they think they already know each other. But you can't truly know a person who's still in motion. Desire dies in the absence of curiosity, and curiosity dies when we believe there's nothing left to learn. These positions are simply a way of saying, I'm still learning you, I'm still choosing you. And when she feels that, when she feels like you are as invested in her pleasure as in your own, she won't just meet you in bed, she'll meet you everywhere else in life with a different kind of openness. Her affection will spill over into the way she looks at you over dinner, the way she leans on your shoulder in public, the way she holds your hand as if it's the most natural thing in the world. If there's one truth I've learned from decades of listening to couples talk about their love lives, it's this: technique without connection is just performance. And while performance might impress for a moment, connection lingers in the body long after the lights are off. The positions we've explored are powerful not because they are physically complex, but because they invite her into a different emotional state. They shift the roles you play, the way your bodies speak to each other. But to make them unforgettable, you need to pair them with something far more important: emotional presence. Emotional presence is what keeps her in the moment instead of in her head. It's the way you tune into the little cues she gives you, the change in her breathing, the way her fingers press into your skin, the way her hips respond when you slow down. It's about reading her not as a script, but as a living, changing story. Men often ask me, how do I know if she's really enjoying it? The answer is deceptively simple. You ask, not always with words, but with attention. When you're in these positions, you don't just move. You listen with your hands, with your mouth, with your eyes. You adjust not to prove you can, but because you want to give her the kind of pleasure that feels tailor-made for her in that exact moment. This is where safety meets excitement. Safety isn't about making everything predictable. It's about creating an atmosphere where she knows she can let go without fear. Excitement isn't about doing something wild. It's about the thrill of being fully seen, fully wanted, and fully met. You see, passion isn't something that just appears when the lights go out. It's cultivated in the way you look at her in the kitchen, the way you reach for her hand when she's had a hard day, the way you make her feel beautiful without her needing to ask. When you do that outside the bedroom, you give her permission to bring her whole self into it when you're inside. These 5 positions become far more than angles when they're paired with that kind of trust. The eye contact in the first position becomes a way of saying, I'm here with you. The guided rhythm in the second becomes, I'm holding space for you to lead. The chest down surrender of the third says, I can take you somewhere deep and I'll take care of you there. The standing embrace says, I'm strong enough to carry you, literally and emotionally. And the seated straddle says, I want to wrap myself around every part of you. This is the language of lovers who understand that sex is not separate from the rest of the relationship. It's a continuation of it. The tenderness you show in the morning coffee ritual is the same tenderness she feels when you press your lips to her shoulder mid-movement. The playful banter you share on a walk is the same playfulness that makes her laugh during a moment of intimacy. The way you listen to her opinions at the dinner table is the same way you listen to her body when you're tangled together in bed. In this way, positions aren't about impressing her, they're about expressing yourself. They're the canvas. You bring the colors. You choose whether those colors are bold, gentle, wild, or slow. And when she knows you're painting the moment for both of you, not just yourself. That's when the magic becomes unforgettable. If there's one thing I want you to take from everything we've explored, it's that intimacy is not a checklist of things to try before you die. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that thrives on attention, curiosity, and care. The 5 positions we've talked about are not magic spells on their own. They are invitations. Invitations into different parts of her body, yes, but also into different parts of her mind, her heart, her history. When you choose to explore these spaces with her, you're saying, I don't just want to be with you. I want to know you. And knowing someone is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing act, one that demands you keep showing up, even when life is busy, even when stress is high, even when you've been together so long you can finish each other's sentences. Because here's the truth, a woman over 30 knows herself more than she did at 20, but she's also more layered, more complex. Her desires are not static. They've been shaped by every love, every loss, every joy, every disappointment. When you meet her there in that complexity, and you say with your touch, I see all of it, and I still want all of it, something inside her relaxes. She doesn't just feel sexy, she feels safe enough to be the fullest version of herself. That's when these positions stop being about novelty and start becoming about memory. You're not just giving her pleasure in the moment. You're planting moments in her mind she will return to in the shower, on her commute, years later when she glances at you across a crowded room. You become the author of a private book only the two of you can read, and it's not just her who changes in this process. You change too. You start to see that your role in intimacy isn't to perform but to participate, not to conquer but to connect. You begin to realize that the real skill is not in how many positions you know, but in how deeply you can turn any position into a shared experience that feels alive, specific, and unrepeatable. Think about that the next time you're with her. Instead of asking yourself, what do I want to do now? Ask, what does this moment want from us? Sometimes it will want playfulness. Sometimes it will want raw, urgent energy. Sometimes it will want slowness so deep it feels like time has stopped. If you listen closely, you'll know which it is. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you become this attuned, you'll find that she will start to open more. She may begin to share her fantasies without fear. She may take your hand and guide you into something new. She may surprise you with a position or a touch you've never felt before. That's the reward of this kind of intimacy. It's reciprocal. So don't just think of these 5 positions as techniques. Think of them as doors. Some you'll open gently, some you'll push wide, some you'll leave ajar for her to step through when she's ready. What matters is that you never stop being curious about what's on the other side, because in the end, the most passionate relationships aren't the ones with the most variety. They're the ones where both people feel endlessly discoverable, where every touch, every kiss, every shared glance says, there's more to you, and I can't wait to find it. And that is what keeps love, lust, and connection alive, not just for a night, but for a lifetime.